So, welcome once again to the Soul Seekers podcast, where I interview people who have found their truth and are now living it. And it's my pleasure today to welcome Brad Carr, who's a photographer, a writer, and he'll no doubt explain what more there is to Brad, who I'm sure is a many-faceted, creative person. So, Brad, tell us, what inspires you, what lights you up, and what is your truth that you're living?
Wow, what a question to start with, Dennis. So, what inspires me? Well, many things. Life itself, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Really getting into the kind of recesses of the human mind, actually. Pain. And healing from that pain. Those are my I guess my biggest inspirations. Touching upon kind of other themes of stillness and seeking.
Yeah.
I guess is my biggest inspiration is the search, the seeking for seeking, finding something more, something deeper, something else, and reconnection with the soul.
So, Soul Seekers is a very appropriate podcast for you to come on.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, I actually was in two minds. I just produced my first book, and I titled it "Finding Light," but actually I was in a bit of a predicament as to whether to call it "Seeking Light" at one stage, which implies perhaps more. It's not quite found yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I went with finding because it's all about purpose, finding purpose, and I feel like in your introduction, about finding truth. I certainly feel like I've found mine.
Mm-hmm. So, seeking and finding. Have you always been a seeker?
I would say yes, although I probably for a long time lacked the courage to explore what curiosities I had, if that makes sense.
So, when did you find the courage to start on this quest?
Well, actually, 7 years ago now, which seems quite fitting. I'm at the beginning of a new cycle, hence the book and the production of that. But that really started to form back in 2018. I'd actually been through my first relationship breakdown, so it was grief. Actually, what I thought was the grief of that ending of the relationship, actually through my seeking and searching and journaling and creating, actually found out that it ran much deeper, and it was grief from, my earliest childhood years, really. Grief of damaged parental relationships, and that could go on and on and on, right? That could go beyond even my parents, and where does it begin? But really, that was the catalyst for my searching. Pain, grief, sadness.
I once heard a Buddhist Lama say everything can be used as a tool for enlightenment. Did you relate to that statement at all?
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like, in those kind of moments of pain, that's where I've found my moments of enlightenment.
And what did this breakup teach you about yourself?
Oh, many things. I guess the the most profound one really was actually how I internalized the breakup, from a place of how my own feelings of unworthiness as a man. So I mentioned to you about my parental relationships. So I've had 3 father figures throughout my life, and they led the home for the first 11 years, until my mum finally decided that was enough of these cycles repeating themselves, and called an end to that. So there's always been I guess the core of, the core wound for me was this deep masculine unworthiness, wounding of not being man enough, not being strong enough, not being decisive enough, assertive enough, and all of these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I think the key learning from that relationship breakup was how my own ability to internalize things rather than looking outward at her and why has she done this to me, she's ended this relationship, but actually it kind of brought to light my ability to make these things the making of me, and to use them for fuel and to turn that pain into power.
You were no longer the victim but the victor.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's quite interesting that you said that, because I just wrote an essay on the same themes recently.
Yeah, well, a lot of the work I do is all about empowering people and helping them see that, we're not victims, that we have agency, and that a lot of our suffering is from beliefs we have about ourselves. When something happens and we believe we're not good enough, or it's our fault, or whatever. And it sounds like that's the journey you've been on.
Absolutely, a journey of healing, and as much this as anything. It's been a psychological journey as much as it's been a creative journey. A bodybuilding transformation journey at one stage. It was all very outward, but what was happening was, of course, the internal rewiring and rewriting narratives.
And have you had any help along the way from a therapist or a soul friend? Or
many soul friends, many soul friends. My help has been not from one source. I've contemplated therapy at a few points throughout my journey so far, particularly through when I've been through something particularly difficult that actually was of my own making, that kind of led me into a real place of difficulty psychologically. But I felt like for me a lot of my guidance came from within, really, from a place of maybe listening to the soul and following that intuition. But that can't come from also without also having those relationships on the external. I feel like, everyone's our teacher, right? Everybody's our mirror and our spiritual teacher in so many ways as well. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, soul friends, I've had hundreds probably along the way, and people who've shone their insights actually at points where I've just said, help, and find that courage to say, okay, I've gone far enough, now I need some guidance.
Yeah. And I'm interested how this then went into creativity, and you started photography. You've just published a book recently, haven't you? And tell me about the photographic journey.
Okay, so probably 1 month, maybe 2 months into my pain, my heartbreak, I was laying on my bedroom floor one day and I'd been grieving, so I'd been crying, watching some YouTube videos that were quite inspirational actually, about how other people had dealt with their own periods of, whatever pain it was for them. So I'd reached this point where I was laying down and I'd been crying, and I kind of thought, enough's enough, feel it, of course, that's important. I think that's the most important thing to do as humans. But then I kind of just woke up with this wave of inspiration to turn what I was feeling at the time into something. I didn't know what it was, but I decided to pick my camera phone up one day and turned the camera around to face me, and took a selfie actually of me smiling with a big cheesy smile, which was completely false because that's not what I was feeling on the inside. But I uploaded this photograph to an Instagram account, and decided that I was going to turn my pain into my power, and I embarked upon a pretty strict regime in the gym for what turned out to be a couple of years. And I basically documented the whole journey through a series of photographs and videos. There's some photographs of me and videos of me really, grimacing in the gym. And I shared the journey for 2 years, at which point I was invited to go outdoors for a walk, actually, to Pista Hreda, which isn't too far from here, over the Bare Winds. And it was the first time, really, I'd been invited or actually gone out into nature because I agreed to go, and that was kind of like quite a profound journey, because actually I walked past my sister's bedroom at the time, and she had a DSLR camera sat on her dressing room table, and I'd been through my little journey of documented pictures, and I thought, oh, that could be an interesting way to maybe evolve these pictures into something better. I've had a growth mindset and always kind of wanted to do something better, and that was the next step, and it was almost like this light bulb of inspiration, like a ding, there we go, like this moment. So yeah, I sent my sister a text, I think, at the time, and said, hey, can I borrow your camera? She agreed to let me, and I took this thing outdoors, and I just decided, I just felt called to kind of click away at everything I could see. A tuna sandwich being probably the most random thing. My friend, even pictures of nature, pictures of the waterfall and of trees, pictures of like my feet kind of dangling over the edge of the top of Pista Rhaeda, which kind of gave a story of kind of freedom and maybe a bit of danger. And
Pista Rhaeda being the largest waterfall in Wales.
That's right. Actually, I think that one of the largest free falling in the UK. I think. Yeah. So, I mean, that was, I guess you could say, the day that changed my life, really, because getting behind the camera was almost like this feeling of going home. It put me in this place of just peace, like something I've been searching for my whole life, actually. So it was like returning to a version of me. Maybe a safety, I don't know, but also maybe I can express something with this thing. This allows me to maybe communicate in ways that I've not been able to, but have always been in there in my mind, that I've kind of wanted to communicate, but maybe this distrust or disbelief that people can understand what I'm trying to say, if that makes sense to you. So I mean, that was probably, I think, 6.5 years ago, or 5.5 years ago. I can't remember exact time frames now, when I first picked the camera up. But once I had that in my hand and I had this form of expression, so instead of pointing the camera towards me, it was pointing it towards the outer world. So it was kind of like this story of me telling my own story of pain into power, and documenting that. But then, now I am in the world, so perhaps telling that story. And there were still elements of self-portraiture going on there as well, where I was taking pictures of myself, like setting up on a tripod and taking pictures of myself in the natural world. And then, I mean, I just kept looking towards different subjects, and I found that nature was my muse for, basically from the first moment until now. It's evolved many times, which I'm sure we could get into.
So you're taking pictures of what we'll call the outside world for the moment. But there's also some representation of who you are, because you're composing the picture and deciding what to shoot. So it's a snapshot of you as well, really.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that, because I reflect quite often on how photographs are self-portraits, in as much as they're telling my story as the story of the outer world. And I wrote an essay, I think it was last year, and I called it A Bridge Between Two Worlds. And it's that idea that the camera is bridging my inner world to the outer world, and also connecting our souls at the same time through, the eyes are the window to the soul. Right? So that's my theory.
And the lamp of the lamp of the body, was it Jesus said?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have to look that one up. The eyes are the lamp of the soul, I think.
Right. Okay.
Check it afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. In the biblical times, it was thought that the eyes actually shone light out, and that is how you were able to see.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have added a new layer of to my essay there. Hey, we'll have to look at that one afterwards.
And I'm really interested in this subject-object duality and non-dualism. The idea that there is only one reality, and that there is no subject. How do you relate to that idea?
Can you give me a little bit more on that in terms of a photograph being?
Well, in terms of seeing the outer world as just a reflection of what's inside, and it's all part of one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely something that's emerged into my thinking and actually into my work. This theory of interconnectedness. It's a kind of something that I'm looking at quite often through the relationships of trees intermingling and intertwining, and and then also, you know, putting myself within that relationship as well in that woodland environment. Sometimes I'll take my shoes off and, you know, go barefooted and soak up the earth's energy at the same time, and really become a part of it. So, you know, I've been under the kind of not the impression, the awareness that these things aren't necessarily me doing them, rather they're just being created through me, or I'm just observing. I'm just observing the natural world and clicking and being a part of it. And so, is that me creating that, or is it creating itself through me? Yeah.
Well, there is a view that we are the universe becoming conscious of itself.
Right.
People like Brian Swim have written about this. And yes, so this is one way the universe observes itself, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, and the truth will be revealed through that, right? You know, like I could put my spin on it and, you know, tell my stories, but there is a truth interwoven underneath all of those words and language that can sometimes limit.
Yes, and the trees are also interwoven and communicate with each other, don't they?
Yeah, there's actual scientific proof. I think in The Hidden Life of Trees, a book by a German author, of the connection that, you know, the trees are all rooted together underneath, and the mycelium networks talk to each other. And I read a book also by an Irish lady who studied trees in her early years, and found a chemical that runs through them that is similar to, I think it's the serotonin in our brains. So she posed the question: do trees dream, perhaps?
I've heard of DMT being present throughout the natural world. The chemical that gives us visions when you take mushrooms or ayahuasca, and it's present in both animals and plants.
Wow.
Another avenue to explore. Yes, I mean, obviously it's in plants, because when you ingest the plant, you have the experience of it, but it's present widely in the plant kingdom.
So what's it doing to them?
Yes, are they having a psychedelic trip?
Do they, you know, look at another plant and say, "This is my land, get off," you know?
Well, that's where symbiosis and competition are presented as different views of the natural world, and I expect there's a lot more cooperation than we've previously realised. I think that's one of the emerging themes now in people who are studying nature, that we thought they were all competing with each other, but there's a lot more cooperation.
Sure, yeah.
So tell me about your book.
Okay, so the book really accumulates everything that I've learnt, or everything that I've unlearnt in as many ways over the past 7 years. So it tells the story of my life, from the beginning to the present moment, really. And I'm very open in my writings about what I've experienced and the lessons that I've learnt. And like I said a moment ago, the things that I've unlearnt along the way. So it just tells the entire story of birth, basically, until creativity until now, and creativity's the theme and the unlocking of that creativity. I mean, we're all creative throughout our whole lives, right? But I mean, on a kind of conscious level. So that moment of what you might call it awakening or whatever back in 2018. But what that's taught me from taking accountability, taking stock, and not running on autopilot anymore. So I mean, the book's compiled of around 100 photographs. I've just created 2 new essays, so it's not actually out yet, it's just due to be released. So I've just written 2 new essays that are going to make their way in there, which now takes it up to around 25 essays, maybe even 27 essays, all of various different themes, but all kind of cohesive in their message of hope for the future, and kind of real depths of psychology and philosophy interwoven within those words as well.
And are the pictures married with the essays, or are they separate?
They're very much separate, apart from a few. So there's not really any essays that are about a photograph, because I like to let most of the photographs speak for themselves. There are a couple that are about the experience of being out on that particular day. So the essays are more contextual around bodies of work, around themes. So there's one that's called Seeking Stillness, and there are 2 reference photos from that essay. But the essays are very much about that process of creating and the process of being out and connecting and finding that deeper part within the self that perhaps makes pure creativity possible.
And what's the title of the book?
The book is called Finding Light.
Finding Light. Great.
Quite fitting.
Play upon words.
Yeah, and very much about finding purpose and finding that pure soulful version of the self beyond the constructs and ego and conditioning and limiting beliefs.
So are you able to articulate that purpose in words, or does the book just point towards it?
I think the book probably points towards it better than my words now can. Within the words that are written, they would probably do a better job of that, I think, because I find that page is the purest mirror. As good as good of a mirror as another person can be, the pages are the purest mirror. But the purpose really is I mean, it's about connection as much as anything, and it's about looking beyond what limits connection, because connection is our purest. It is our natural state to be connected to others and to love and to experience joy. So I mean, that's the purpose. It's connection and understanding and acceptance as well, I would say, of who we are and the things that we've all experienced, because I feel like what I'm writing about and sharing is universal. Everybody can relate to it in their own way.
And you talked about love. Is peace also part of that?
Peace comes interwoven with stillness and finding inner peace amidst the chaos, and not losing that despite what might be going on externally at whatever time, because we are creating with what goes on inside now, right? So I mean, peace can always be found within. Sometimes I feel like we do have to maybe experience the opposite to find that peace again, but it's the natural state, and it's the natural state I experience whilst outdoors. Generally it's peace once I get beyond the noise and the mind. Sometimes it is still.
And are you inspired by any other artists or writers, or just the natural world?
I'm always intrigued by this question, because I don't really have... I've tried not to idolise people, if you know what I mean, and I find that with inspiration as such, it can come with a little bit of idolisation sometimes, and I've been reluctant to do that, especially actually with photographs. So when I tell people that I'm not necessarily inspired by photographers. Being primarily a photographer, they tend to be quite surprised. But I've found that by being too fixed on somebody's work, I don't want to imitate anybody. I've kind of found my place now. But I would say music is probably my biggest inspiration, and the lyrics contained within music as well.
Any particular artists you'd like to mention?
There's one called John Hopkins that springs to mind. Do you know John Hopkins?
No, I only know the John Hopkins University.
Right. Well, I feel like
different John
Hopkins. Yeah. Is John Hopkins University to do with psychedelic research?
That's one of the things they're doing.
Because John Hopkins, the musician, actually has an album called Music for Psychedelic Therapy.
Interesting. Yes.
So whether his name actually isn't John Hopkins. His name is something else. So whether his artist name comes as a has been inspired by that. But he has a piece of music called Immunity.
Yeah.
And it's very progressive. And it takes me on a journey, and I mean, I've healed to that piece many times on my journeys back from Snowdonia on my photography adventures. I've just got probably 3 or 4 particularly profound journeys home after I've been and connected, where I've just had tears streaming from my face, and it's been a therapeutic experience to be outdoors in nature and then coming back with that music on. He's the one that springs to mind. There's also, I think he might be Icelandic, or he's from Scandinavia somewhere. He's called Peter Sandberg. And he has another few classical composer, he's like a pianist, I think. He has a few beautiful pieces of music, but then I'm inspired by folk music and all sorts of things.
When I think of nature, of the artist that inspires me most is Andy Goldsworthy. Are you familiar with his work?
I feel like I've heard the name, but I've not.
He takes natural objects and arranges them into works of art, and then just leaves them there. So he might take leaves and arrange leaves on the ground.
Now I know what you mean.
Yeah.
He's a photographer too, right?
He or his associates take pictures of the artwork. That's the only permanent result.
Right. What is it about his work that inspires you?
He takes nature, which is already beautiful, and he makes something which has got an added beauty to it.
Yeah. And
it sort of accentuates for me the natural beauty. And when I'm walking through the forest, especially after Storm Dara, I see things perched in the trees, things which have fallen down and they're delicately balanced. And it reminds me of Andy Goldsworthy's work. Like, there's a natural sculpture.
Right.
Yeah, just like he might make.
So you're seeing the beauty in what might potentially be deemed as ugly, right? By some people, storm damage.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of trees that have come down around here. And, there is beauty in the broken branches and the uprooted trees. And I posted something recently about the spindly trees who've been in the shadow of these great trees now have their chance. This is their moment.
Yeah.
So it's not all bad that the forest needs to weed itself out every so often.
And I always take lessons, and I don't know if you resonate from this, but I always take lessons when I see a fallen tree, especially when it's a grand old big tree, and it's always this kind of thought of grow big but not too big, that you outgrow everything else.
And be careful to be rooted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And are you doing anything besides the book at the moment? Any other projects on the go?
Yeah, I've actually just written a book of poetry and prose, actually about love, of all things, which is completely different from my usual work, but there are still themes of nature interwoven into my writings, and I feel quite strongly compelled to do more of that kind of writing that is more objective than subjective, and blending two approaches, one that's very much more mind-based and thought-based, and perhaps more, you might argue, more masculine, that it's, logical and rational, and then blending the thought and or the meditative, reflective kind of approach to creativity as well.
Yeah.
So there's that going on. I also I've just landed a role with a large photographic tour guiding company called Light and Land.
Wow.
So I'm hosting a tour of Wales, of Snowdonia, or Eryri now, right?
Yes.
In October for them, with a view to running more of these workshops with them in the future.
Will that be people taking their own pictures?
Yeah. So that's me and another tutor called Verity Milligan guiding a group of 10 around. And for me, it's more about opening avenues of conversation about their own creative process as well, and maybe inspiring perhaps a different kind of thought around photography for people, because photography can attract maybe more technical, practical thinkers, generally speaking. So I want to try and put a little bit of a different spin on things, and share a little bit more of my way of doing things, which obviously borders them perhaps more spiritual and that side of things as well. So there's lots on the go for me at the moment, and I'm actually hosting my own creative retreat in November. So that's photography and writing.
Okay, where's that going to be?
That's in Snowdonia as well.
Snowdonia.
That's a private one in Snowdonia, and that's a group of 5 people. And quite an intensive dive into creativity as a whole.
Sounds wonderful.
Trying to think of what else I've got going on. I have my YouTube channel, which is based around the creative process. So I'm currently making more videos about that, and sharing insights into photography, insights into creativity, and hopefully helping and inspiring people to go out and unlock their own doors and walk.
Creativity, it's a fascinating subject. You talked about the muse. It's like it comes to us and knocks on our door. Just let me in.
And are we willing to open it?
Yes.
And are we able to open it?
Yeah.
Because it needs some freedom in life to be able to do that sometimes, doesn't it? To answer the call.
Yeah.
So do you answer the muse yourself? And
how? I write poetry and some essays, and I've got an idea for a novel, and it's waiting to be born, but it's not quite ready yet.
What kind of essays?
Essay reflections on life and the lessons you get from observation, things like my walk in the woods. I said to the woods the other day, what lesson do you have for me? And it showed me this spindly tree, and there was my answer. And podcasting, that's my current obsession, I would say. Encouraging other people to share their stories.
Sure. Well, it's a great platform, right? To be able to do that, or a great purpose to be able to do that for people.
Well, perhaps we've come to the end of this little exploration of you, Brad, and your work, and the door is always open to come back and share some more with us.
Great. Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone. And your website, Brad, where can people contact you?
So my website is www.bradcarphotography.co.uk. I have an Instagram page, which is @BradCarPhotos. I'm on Facebook @BradCarPhotos. I'm on YouTube under Brad Carr. I think all of the links are on my website.
Yeah,
And I think
okay.
the website's probably the best place to go to because it has, well, all of my links, my galleries, and my journal, which is where I like to encourage people to go because it's more educational over there.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.